Hi, my name is Layton. I'm an intuitive and a mystic. And today I wanted to talk about occult anatomy and the path of neural alchemy. It's something that I am really passionate about. And that's also because I have to utilize this in my life, and it has done wonders for me. The practices that I'm going to share with you in this video are practices that some places will charge you thousands of dollars for. And I'm just going to tell you everything for free because I think it's your birthright. I think it's my birthright. I think that we should all know how to utilize neural alchemy. It is a part of us. It's something that should not cost all of this money because it's ancient knowledge. It's something that we would not have to pay for if we had never engaged in this kind of society that has disconnected us for so long from who we really are, that we have forgotten these things that used to come so naturally to us. And so I think it's important for us to reintegrate those things. That being said, I have a video that I uploaded 8 months ago called Etherization of the Blood and Neuroplasticity. If you have not seen that video, or if you just want a refresher, I would suggest going and watching that first because it's going to lay the foundation for many of the concepts that I'm going to talk about in this video. So first and foremost, I want to talk about the limbic system. And as a mystic, as an occultist, I believe that everything, and I can very clearly see this, every anatomical figure within our body, every organ, every cell, every nerve is connected to some kind of astral or etheric process. And when we understand that and we begin to come into this kind of symbiotic relationship with all of these different elements of our body, with our blood, with our organs, with our limbs, everything, we will see changes that we did not know were possible because we are awakening these higher aspects, and we are quite literally in some cases turning genes on and off and turning on our DNA. And this is measurable. This is not woo-woo. This is not kookiness. It is actually measurable. And I also talk about that in my video on etherization of the blood and neuroplasticity, about how we are getting to a point where we can't deny these processes any longer because we can see them on a brain scan. We can't necessarily explain them, but we can see different things. And so I think this is extremely important to talk about because it's going to come out more and more and more. The more that we develop as a society, and the greater of an understanding that we have on these topics, so much is going to come out, and then people will be referred back to occult science. And we really live in an exciting time, quite honestly, because everything is changing right now, and some things might feel like they are not changing for the better. I know I certainly feel that way about some things that are going on. But the reason why humanity is facing such a massive shadow right now, which is our shadow that we need to work through and transmute of past impulses and ways that we have failed in past civilizations, is because we are getting to a point where we have so much light to integrate. And that we can see that astrologically too. We are really hitting this point where within the next few years, things are going to change in ways that you would never expect. So starting with the limbic system, the limbic system is located deep within the brain, and it's on both sides of the thalamus above the brainstem. The limbic system is in charge of our emotions. It's in charge of our emotional patterns. So what happens is when we are in childhood and we are in our early stages of development, certain situations happen, and as we are moving through these situations and learning things about life, we are programming the limbic system which in turn sends certain messages to our nervous system, which sends certain messages to our immune system and impacts everything in the body. So if we have a poorly programmed limbic system, and then that is causing dysfunction of the nervous system, that is going to cause autoimmune disease. It's going to cause symptoms that seem like mental illness. It can cause all kinds of problems, even paralysis and things like that. So it's really important that we have this understanding that what has been programmed also has the ability and capacity to be undone and reprogrammed. How I got into all of this stuff, and if you know me personally or have followed me for a long time, then you probably know I have been dealing with really severe allergies, or as I've now been calling them, allergic symptoms, for a very long time, to the point where I have had to use an EpiPen so many times I can't even count. And I've gone through periods of my life where it felt like during certain times it was just constantly life and death, because my nervous system was in such a state of fight or flight that even when I was the most regulated and in a really good state, I had certain programming in my limbic system that would trigger my nervous system into dysregulation. And this isn't the kind of thing that you can just meditate out of. I mean, maybe if you're a master, you can, but we really need to have an understanding of these more complex processes if we are going to unravel these more complex disorders. So with something like MCAS, in case you aren't familiar with it, it's mast cell activation syndrome. And what was happening for me is that I had multiple different things. For those of you who don't know, I'm a detransitioned female, meaning that I'm a female that went on testosterone for 3 years and then came off of testosterone. As you can imagine, that really wreaked havoc on my nervous system, on my immune system, on my endocrine system. It was not good for my body. And at the same time, I lived in a house that was overrun with black mold for years, and I had no idea. It was hidden and everything. But as I was living there, I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So everything kind of came to a head. And after going through all of that for years, then I had started to experience many different allergic symptoms and expressions of allergies. And then years later, I had COVID in the first wave, and it totally wiped me out. And I experienced basically nonstop allergic reactions to things. It started off with food. And then it turned into my environment. It turned into nature. It turned into shampoo and deodorant and incense and pretty much anything that you can smell, I would have some sort of allergic response to. Now, as you can imagine, this got me into a position where it was very difficult to leave the house. It was very difficult to live normally because I was constantly fighting for my life. So again, as I was saying before, I would be so regulated, feeling so good, and my nervous system really had built up a lot of resilience. However, because I still had these certain limbic patterns and really poor neuroplasticity around these specific events and exposures, I did not have the ability to keep myself grounded and regulated through these different events as they would come up. And this is because the limbic system is responsible for our survival responses. So when we think of survival responses, we think of fear, panic, anxiety, anger, those things that are going to snap you into kind of an adrenaline response. And essentially, when the body becomes extremely overloaded and it is consistently exposed to threats for a long period of time, it begins to register everything as a threat. So think of the saying, you know how they say it takes 30 days to build a habit or to break a habit or whatever. The amount of time that it takes to build up a certain response, that can sometimes take the same amount of time to undo that response and to reprogram it. Sometimes it happens a lot faster for people. I have had progress in certain areas with this that is just mind-boggling. I'm talking 85% progress in a 2-week period where all of a sudden in the past I couldn't even be in the room with someone that had a scented deodorant on or something like that, without either getting extremely sick or anaphylactic. To then being in an Ulta with my wife and my grandmother for 40 minutes, smelling all kinds of things, and the worst I experienced was a runny nose. I mean, not on any medication, not on mast cell stabilizers, not on H1 or H2 blockers, not on antihistamines, nothing. So this is really, really powerful stuff. It is very, very powerful stuff that you will see massive progress with. But the timeline is going to look different for everyone. And part of that is the fact that I had prepped my body previously to this limbic retraining by heavily detoxing. And this is not just a physical detox, but every physical detox that we partake in, it's also an astral detox, and we're detoxing karmic things. And so anytime you engage in any kind of fast or any kind of physical detox, it's very important to acknowledge the fact that it's not only a physical process happening. There is so much happening spiritually and astrally, and we need to be engaged with that process. Otherwise, it won't be complete. We can do all of the physical detoxes in the world, and if we are not acknowledging the spiritual aspect of things, there will be a missing element that will make it very difficult for us to actually see progress. The other thing is that you need to be in a state where you have at least some nervous system resilience. So if you aren't in a place yet where you have at least a little bit of nervous system resilience that you can fall back on, then do not start this yet. Work on the resilience, work on, and this, a video that I have that would be really good for this is my video on 5G and EMFs and Wi-Fi. I go over a bunch of different somatic exercises there that can be very helpful to integrate when you are basically starting with nothing and trying to learn the basics and trying to feel safe in your body under circumstances that feel very, very unsafe. So I would say that that is kind of the beginner place that you want to start. And then this is for people who have at least some nervous system resilience. They have detoxed the body a good amount, meaning you know that you don't have a bunch of heavy metals in your system or something. You aren't constantly exposed to toxins if you have been, and you have the somatic basics down, but now you want to engage in your healing in a deeper way, but you still have to detox some things. Then I would recommend taking regular Epsom salt baths. You can put some baking soda in there. You can drink small amounts of baking soda water, and that can help tremendously. Do some fasting. None of this is medical advice, okay? So this is just me saying the things that I do for my own body. I also take zeolite. I take Interphase Plus. They also have just regular Interphase, and some people like the Interphase better than the Interphase Plus. I did not notice a difference, to be honest. They both help me tremendously, and so I am constantly incorporating those things on top of eating as clean as I possibly can, drinking lots of water. I don't drink other liquids. I only drink water, and I drink a lot of water. And so putting some Celtic sea salt in there to make sure that you're staying hydrated while you're also flushing things out of your system can help tremendously. That being said, the nerve sense system in anthroposophy, and I have so many notes here that I'm going to be bouncing back and forth around on, because if I don't, I could talk about this topic for 10 million years, honestly. So just bear with me here. The nerve sense system in anthroposophy is connected to conscious thought and perception. But when that becomes overactive, it depletes the etheric body, leading to stress and illness. Limbic retraining is one way to restore balance between the nerve sense system, the rhythmic system, and the metabolic limb system. Limbic retraining works on harmonizing the astral body's influence on the physical body, calming overactive patterns in the soul. So all of this is karmic. When we have an experience in childhood that programs the limbic system a certain way, and the nervous system is then receiving this messaging from the limbic system when something happens that is saying, this is a danger, this is not safe, this is something that is going to harm us. That then sends other messages to the immune system and to the endocrine system in order to attempt to preserve resources within the body. This is extremely karmic because we don't have these programmed reactions happening if there is not some sort of epigenetic factor at play. And if you don't know what epigenetics are, it's essentially when something is, instead of it being genetic, so it's not that it's being passed down in your DNA, it's being passed down as this kind of emotional trauma. There is this element where there is some sort of event happened that was passed down. So for example, say you had a great grandmother who was bit by a dog, and your mom was never bit by a dog, and you were never bit by a dog, and she never told either of you that she was bit by a dog. But when you are born and in childhood and you hear a dog bark or you see a dog, your entire body freezes up. Your shoulders get tense. You might pull them in a little bit in a way of protecting the chest area. And you may hold your breath and the eyes get wide because you're having an epigenetic response. So it's not necessarily something that is embedded in your DNA. It's an emotional response that was passed from your grandmother to your mother, then to you. And this happens all the time. So it's important that we understand that, because when we are working through these things, we are not just working through, oh, I have this, when I'm talking about how I had the disruption to my endocrine system by being on testosterone for 3 years, and then I lived in this house that had mold everywhere, and then I had COVID. All of those things I was susceptible to because of epigenetics. I was susceptible to certain physical responses because of emotional trauma that was in my family line. And this trauma impacts the limbic system, and fear through the limbic system is passed through the womb when a woman gives birth. If you have not studied these things, it can sound kind of cuckoo. It can sound like I'm making stuff up, but I implore you to do the research. This is a very real thing. And it does happen. There are actually some incredible stories about epigenetics and how people have taken on certain memories that are really cosmic memories. And so this can be a trauma, but it can also be something very, very positive as well. So this impacts the astral body and emotional healing. The astral body, which is the seat of emotions and desires, often dominates in conditions of limbic system dysregulation. And so these techniques that I'm going to be teaching you are going to help to not only undo past limbic patterns and undo epigenetic trauma, but also to build and create new patterns, patterns of safety. So again, if you've watched this and you still haven't gone back and watched my video on etherization of the blood and neuroplasticity, I'm going to link it in the description below. Please go and watch that first, because it is really important to have a full understanding of what I'm talking about here, because our ability to etherize our blood, which means to spiritualize our human form, directly correlates with our ability to retrain the limbic system. That is the building of our positive neuroplasticity. It is neural alchemy, neural retraining, because the things that are recommended in order to rewire the limbic system are the very same things that are opening up our entire physical system to higher forces and higher beings that are then working upon our system to bring a sense of harmony and a sense of balance within the body. So as we work with our limbic system, we aren't working alone. We're working with higher forces. And I have a series coming out soon. I'm not going to give a timeline, because every time I give a timeline, something comes up and then I end up being late. So I'm not going to give a timeline, but I have a series coming out soon where I am going to be talking about the different systems of the body and how they correlate with various spheres. And so we're going to get a lot deeper into all of those things. But right now, I am going to put my money with where my mouth is, and I am going to show you, before we even get into all of that stuff, because it is important and it is cool, but in order to show you how cool it is, I have to show you how it works. And once you see how it works, I really believe that you will become so interested in all of this, because you will be able to see and feel for yourself the miraculous, mystical experience of neural alchemy and how that actually impacts things, and how it can bring so much more healing to the body than we ever expected. So that being said, I had written something about limbic retraining and what it means, and because I can kind of jump all over the place when I'm speaking, I am going to read from this to kind of give you an understanding of what exactly we're doing here. So through limbic retraining, it's all about reprogramming the limbic system through sending cues of safety to the body via eye movements, body language, vocal cues. For example, when we feel afraid or unsafe, our bodies might naturally hunch over, tense up. We might tighten the jaw. These are all signals to the nervous system that something is wrong. Over time, these patterns can become so ingrained that our body constantly thinks it's in danger, even when there's no real threat. But when we deliberately shift our posture, like opening up the chest, relaxing the shoulders, softening the jaw, or even smiling, it sends a different message to the nervous system that things are okay, which can reduce the perceived threat and calm the limbic system. Now this, I recognize that this sounds very simple. It sounds like, Layton, how did you go from being anaphylactic at the smell of someone's deodorant to then just sitting up straight and smiling, and now you can go in an Ulta for 40 minutes? And it's a lot more complicated than that. It's still easy. It is fairly easy, but we have to be consistent and we have to understand why we are doing the things that we are doing, because if we don't have an understanding of it, then it's not going to work. For example, we have ancient cues that the nervous system has always sent to our own bodies and to other people. If I was a cave person and I walked up to another cave person that I didn't know, and I wasn't showing my palms or my hands, I was sending this cue that maybe I have a weapon. Maybe I'm a dangerous person. I'm not a friend. We actually started the wave as a way to say, hi, I'm your friend. Look, I don't have a weapon in my hands. I'm opening myself to you. You don't have to be afraid of me, and I'm not afraid of you. We have these signals that we send to our own bodies and that we send to other people all the time that go back to being cave people. I mean, we have always done these things, but we are so disconnected from our bodies at this point in time that we don't even realize it. So when we meet people still, we wave or we open our hand to them to show them, you can trust me. I'm a trustworthy person. I'm open to you. When we're standing with someone who we want to have a conversation with, our body is facing them. Our feet are facing them. And subconsciously, when we don't want to be in that conversation and we want to leave, even if it's not something we're actively thinking of, the feet are open and to the side, literally waiting for an escape. So we do the exact same things when we perceive a threat, when we perceive danger. Again, we're hunching ourselves down. They did a study where they had all these criminals in a room, and they had the criminals watching all of these other people that were selected at random. And they had each criminal, they weren't speaking with each other, but they had each criminal choose from the room who they wanted to target, who they saw as someone that they could take advantage of, someone that they could target. They all chose the same exact people. And that's because they were going based off of body language. So there were people in the room and they were hunched over and looking down and they weren't confident. And their bodies were already in that position of, I'm vulnerable. Take advantage of me. I'm not threatening. I'm not resilient. I'm not strong. That is what we are telling ourselves when we are constantly choosing to be in that position. I want to make it really clear that if you have some sort of physical condition that forces your body in that posture, it does not mean that you are going to be stuck in that state forever. You can still work with your limbic system to make sure that your body is not receiving those messages. But in most other cases, we need to actively work to combat those signals. If you stand up straight, and think about it this way too. If you are having a really bad migraine, if you feel very nauseous, if you are feeling very dysregulated or something, usually you're automatically slouched and your body position is contorted, and we shape our bodies in response to these different events or these different things that we're experiencing or feeling. And it sends the message to our bodies to maintain that condition and to stay in that condition. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you have a migraine and you just sit up straight that and smile, that it's going to make the migraine go away. But I am suggesting that we can retrain how much the body views and perceives different experiences as a threat when we change our posture, when we change our vocal cues and all of these different things. So for example, our vocal cues send massive signals to the body. When I say, I am so anxious, I am so stressed out, I am afraid, and I'm saying that out loud, say that I am venting to someone or I am complaining outwardly, my body hears that and it responds with more of it because it hears, oh, I'm being told that I should be afraid right now. I feel afraid, and clearly that is now being confirmed to me. So now I'm going to lean even more into that. But what happens instead when I say to myself, I'm resilient, I'm strong, I'm okay. This thing happened, but I don't have to react. I'm resilient. My body is resilient. I recover quickly. I recover easily. I can recover from this. What happens when we start speaking these cues? So it's less about the individual thing, because I don't want to send this message that, again, you stand up straight and you say something over your body, and then it goes away. It is a lot more complex than that. So I actually have a list of some things that I'm going to read to help explain the kind of environment that will help to really put this into effect, because it's not going to work if you just are randomly exposed to something and then attempt to implement this. We have to be intentional. We have to set an intention spiritually. We have to feel enough resilience in the moment. We need to choose an exposure that feels the safest. We're not going to completely freak out about it. And this doesn't just have to be something like, for example, with me, when I first started doing this, I was doing it with dried mango. And I was just eating my dried mango and creating a safe atmosphere for myself and doing all these different things to teach my body that it was safe to eat dried mango and that it was okay. You can do this with any kind of emotional trigger. You can do this with any kind of relational trigger. Anything that is causing stress to the nervous system, that is environmental, or maybe it's different food allergies, or it's just the body overreacting to something, you can do this with. There are people who had Lyme disease that were paralyzed, and through limbic retraining, they could walk again. I mean, that is miraculous. It's incredible. And that's why there are people that charge thousands of dollars for this information. And that's not to say that you shouldn't pay for it if you want to go and get all of this information and be able to really throw yourself into it in an organized, structured way. But you don't necessarily need to do that. This information is free. And if you really want access to it, you can have access to it. Everybody should know how to do this. Everybody should know that our posture, the things that we say, the tone at which we speak, that our eye movements, that all of these things play a part in our immune system's ability to function, and in our astral body's ability to be nourished and replenished by the etheric body. Because that only happens when we can move ourselves from a sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state. So if we're staying in the sympathetic state all the time, and we have dropped now down into the lower nervous system because we cannot get out of fight or flight to save our lives, what do you think is happening astrally and etherically? The etheric body is not going to be able to properly connect to the astral body to nourish and replenish it. So the physical body is going to be completely cut off from these life-giving forces. That being said, let's get into how to actually practically implement this. All exposures should be done in a safe and controlled manner, especially at home, because when you are at home, that is where you want to feel the most safe. So if you are doing some sort of trigger or exposure at home, it's important to make sure that it is in a controlled manner, that you feel prepared before you do it, that you are sending specific cues to your body before you engage in this. Because if you don't feel safe at home, then home will become an environmental stress and an environmental trigger. Every single exposure needs to be communicated about. So if you live, let's say that you are doing what I was doing with fragrance exposures and scents, and trying to train my body to not overreact to smelling something, even if it's something toxic. Because I want to be clear, we're not gaslighting the body. I'm not saying to myself, oh yeah, this Gucci perfume, that's definitely an endocrine disruptor. This is safe. You don't need to react about that. It's good for you. I'm not telling my body that. What I'm instead saying to my body is, I am going to go out into public and be around people wearing Dolce & Gabbana perfume or Axe body spray or whatever, and I'm resilient enough to smell that, acknowledge that. I mean, sometimes it smells really good. Sometimes it doesn't, but I can acknowledge that I'm smelling it. And even though I know this is an endocrine disruptor, even though I know it has all of these toxic synthetic chemicals in it, I do not have to react. This is something I am experiencing just for a moment. It is, this person is walking by me, I am having this experience, and now they're going to leave, and I don't have to react. We need to get to a place where we can have these exposures in a very controlled way. But in order to have that out in public, you need to be able to have some kind of control over your environment. So if you live with someone and this is the kind of exposure that you're doing, you want to communicate with them to say, hey, if you are going to do something like this, and I'm working to have my nervous system feel less threatened to these things, will you please communicate this with me ahead of time so that I can do my different steps, send these cues to my body, and begin building up that resilience, because otherwise it's really going to feel like an ambush. So it's important to, number one, have consented to the trigger. And again, this is not going to be an all the time thing. This is when you are initially dipping your toes in limbic retraining. You want to make sure that you are consenting to the trigger. So it may be something that you just do at home with yourself, and you say, I'm going to expose myself to this specific thing. For example, maybe there's a person that you feel very triggered by their content. Maybe they say certain things and it kind of rubs you the wrong way, or this could even be someone that you know. And if you're working through those things, you can expose yourself to the trigger in the safety of your own home, go on their Facebook profile, whatever it may be. Allow yourself to take in the information and put your hand over your heart and ground into your body and acknowledge that everything you're feeling is okay, but then send different cues to the body. So I'm trying to give different examples because I want to make sure that you have an understanding on how to actually practically implement this. And it's the same thing with food. If you are going to implement this with something like food for physical healing, you want to make sure that you are having a very controlled diet, and that when it comes to food, you are eating something where you know all of the ingredients in there, and you are intentionally having an experience where it's like, okay, right now I am exposing myself to garlic or, whatever. And kind of going from there, because it just will not be the same if you're ambushed with it, because your nervous system needs to feel safe with you first. It needs to feel safe with you first. If your nervous system feels safe with you first, then it can begin to send those safety cues to the limbic system, which will start to rewire that pattern and reprogram everything. And then once your nervous system feels safe with you, once your body says, I'm safe, even if my environment feels chaotic, I'm safe, even if the people around me are doing things that I wouldn't choose to do, it begins to bring you to a place where you are less reactive and the nervous system can respond in a safer way. And I also want to be clear that none of this is a character flaw. You can't just think your way out of this. It is very important to send those nervous system cues. If we just say to ourselves, well, I don't need to react while I'm hunched over and I'm tense and I'm clenched, that's not going to do anything, because what we're sending the body is still all of these signals that are saying you need to be afraid. You are not safe. You are tense, and there's a danger, there's a threat, and now we need to protect ourselves, because that's what we're doing. When we close off the front of the body and we round, that's a protective, it's a defensive stance. And that is sending the signals to the body. There's something around me that I need to protect myself from. We can't be our best selves when we're constantly in that state. We deserve to be free and to feel open. But the only way we can do that is if we move into the higher nervous system. And if we train ourselves how to move into the higher nervous system. And I don't mean that in the sense of, oh, I was low vibrational and now I'm high vibrational. This is not just a thought that we have. It's not just, I'm going to shift my energy. We are shifting bodily cues to send physical signals to different systems within the body that cause the body to respond in different ways. If you have ever experienced a vasovagal syncope, that is when the nervous system becomes so overwhelmed that essentially your blood pressure drops and your nervous system tries to get you to pass out so that it can restart. Well, when this happens, it's absolutely terrifying because your blood leaves your extremities and it pools around your organs to kind of act as this padding around your organs to protect your organs so that when you pass out, you don't have organ failure or your heart doesn't stop or anything like that. Well, when that happens, you experience paralysis in the body, severe physical pain, anxiety, panic, all of these things. It's a horrible thing to experience. But the body is so wise because it knows what it's doing. And the entire reason why it did all of that was because signals were sent that there was a danger to the system. The system became so overloaded that it had to now respond in this very extreme way in order to reset so that new signals would be being sent. That being said, I already said this before, but random exposures are not part of exposure therapy until you get to the point where you have enough resilience within your nervous system and you have built up enough trust within yourself through practicing alone first to where you have already started to rewrite that program. You have done the first half on your own, and now the second half is when you go out into the real world and you experience this in a natural, organic way, and you realize, okay, I still have the resilience to overcome this. Random exposures, when we do not have the resilience built up and we haven't built that connection with our nervous system, do nothing but put further stress on the nervous system and on the limbic system. So you really don't want to put short-term emotional discomfort over long-term issues either. And by that I mean that when we are doing this, it can feel uncomfortable when you are first doing it. This is going to sound silly, but I couldn't even take an Uber or be near someone in the grocery store because they had a deodorant on or shampoo. They washed their hair with some shampoo or had some sort of body spray on that was making my body shut down completely. And so when I was preparing myself for that, I have all these perfumes at my house that I just haven't ever gotten rid of, but I have not worn perfume in years because I haven't been able to. So I pulled one of them out and I chose one that was very, very strong. And in a controlled environment, I sat up straight. And there are other cues that you can do too. For example, this is going to seem corny, but you literally put your hand out before you have your exposure. You put your hand out and you say stop. And then you look over your shoulder one way and you look over your shoulder the other way. There's no mountain lion behind me. There's not a serial killer over here. I'm looking around. I'm in my house. Everything is safe. And we're doing that because intentionally looking over your shoulder is very important, because otherwise you can look around the room, and if you're not looking over your shoulder, then the nervous system is still like, well, what's behind me? What's back there? I don't know. I can't fully relax because I don't know. So you want to take all the doubt out of your mind. So it's kind of corny, but I would go to to smell this perfume. I wouldn't spray it because I'm not trying to needlessly disrupt my endocrine system for no reason. It's fine if you have essential oils or something like that. What I'm talking about here is synthetic fragrances that have extremely toxic chemicals in them that objectively are horrible for the endocrine system. So even though I'm smelling this as part of my exposure therapy, I'm not going to be spraying it on myself and putting my body in an actually stressful state. That is not going to be very helpful. What I'm instead doing is making sure, stop, there's nothing behind me on either side. And I'm sitting up straight. My body language is open. And you also want to kind of think of how you move when you're happy. When I'm eating food that I really like, I feel so good and open. And my wife always makes fun of me. She's like, "Oh, that must be good because you're dancing over there." And I just can't help it. And so you want to emulate things that you do with your body when you feel good. When you feel good, you're relaxed, you're open, you're moving a little bit, and you're maybe smiling, or your face is more lifted, your eyes are more lifted, and you want to talk in a calm voice so that your body knows we are relaxed. We don't have to be high pitched. We don't have to be strained. We can just be relaxed. And so you want to bring all of these elements into this. And this really is neural alchemy, because as you bring your body into a calm and relaxed and open state, it is very meditative. And once we get into that meditative state, we begin to open ourselves up to these higher forces. And these higher forces, where we are inviting them in to work upon us and to nourish us. And it's a very healing experience for us. On the flip side of that, when we're constantly in this stressed state and we're clenched, and I'm yelling all the time, and I'm speed walking everywhere, and there's nothing calm about me, and I'm never relaxed, and I'm pissed off all the time, what do you think we're doing then? We're dropped in the lower centers, and we are constantly communicating with these lower beings. That's not to say that we are never being nourished by higher beings, but it's fewer and further between, because we are not bringing ourselves intentionally into the higher nervous system. And that's why I say this is not just a physical process. The more that we open ourselves up to these higher beings, the more seamless the spiritualization of our form becomes. And with the spiritualization of our form, all of the muck and guck and crap in our lower centers comes up into the heart, which is now activated, because the heart can only be activated when we are open, when we are relaxed, when we are in that in those higher emotional states. So it all comes up into the heart, and it begins to be transformed. And the heart acts as this furnace that will start to refine and burn away all of these lower qualities as they are then reshaped into higher faculties. And the process of that, we have, when we talk about the etherization of the blood, it is a physical process, but it is mostly an etheric process. So when we talk about the blood moving through the heart and moving through the thymus and going up into the pineal gland, this is not, it's not physically measurable. And so you want to understand that it is an etheric process that is working with the etheric counterpart of certain organs. And the etheric counterpart of these various organs is the higher aspect of them. And so we are activating through etherization of the blood the higher aspects of these different organs. And when the higher aspects of these different organs are activated, they are nourished and they are filled with life. But when we don't activate them and we are constantly just in the lower centers and we're always in this place of fear, in this place of fight or flight, the etheric counterparts of these physical organs begin to harden and calcify. So what happens then? Well, when they harden and become calcified, then the organs are unable to be replenished. They aren't receiving etheric nourishment anymore. They are completely cut off from life-giving forces. As you can imagine, this leads to sickness and disease and cancers and all kinds of things like that. So at the very least, every single person should be engaging actively in limbic retraining with anything that they need. If you are in a really solid place where you don't really have any health issues, you don't really have any triggers, you are just cruising all the time, then you've probably already made significant progress on your own in this area, and that's amazing. But for most of us, we have at least something that we can incorporate this in, and at the very least, we can just work on the signals that we are sending our own bodies and the signals that we are sending other people. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be the person in a room full of criminals that they're looking at me saying, yep, she's the one I would target because she's all hunched over and doesn't look sure of herself, and she's staring at the ground and not paying attention to her surroundings, and she just looks like a victim. When we carry ourselves that way and we walk around with this stance of I'm a victim, we have a victim mentality and we begin to take that on. And so again, if you have any kind of physical or spinal issue, if you have a spinal support issue that makes it difficult to maintain this kind of posture, and you find yourself rounded or you find yourself hunched, that's not to say that you are screwed and can never make progress in this area. Instead, it's a call to awareness to say, okay, how can I combat this in other ways? How can I make sure that my stance is not sending these signals to my nervous system that is then keeping me in these states of anxiety or dysregulation or dysfunction? We need to be able to understand that. So when we're talking about implementing all of these things practically, there are lots of things that you want to do. For example, with eye movements, when we are in a situation where we are very fearful, we show the whites of our eyes. This is also something that someone who is very psychopathic will do. So if you can see a centimeter or more all the way around someone's pupil, then there's something going on in that person's system where they are either extremely fearful all the time or they are very activated. And you know, when I say psychopathic too, I don't use words like that lightly. So I'm not suggesting that you look at someone and the whites of their eyes are showing and you diagnose them as psychopathic or something like that. What I'm saying is in studies where they have analyzed people who show the whites of their eyes in that way, it is either people who are extremely, extremely fearful or people who are activated in a very psychopathic way where their empathy is just completely turned off and they now are showing these predator eyes. So it's kind of funny because those eyes can be a signal of someone being a predator or a signal of someone being prey, depending on the other signals that they are sending with that. So obviously if someone is showing those eyes, but then simultaneously they're hunched and they just look all small and everything, then they are probably not psychopathic. They're probably just afraid and in fight or flight all the time. However, if someone has this very aggressive, in-your-face, dominant stance and their eyes are super wide and crazy and they shake your hand and you feel like it's going to break off your body, that may be a signal of some other things. So you want to think When you're walking, if I'm walking around the house or I'm walking down the street, I have a tendency to just walk quickly and to be the kind of person that moves very quickly. That's why I'm interested in this stuff, because I have to constantly force myself to slow down. And so when I notice that, I stop and I say, okay, I'm going to slow down right now. What would it feel like if I just walked a little bit more slowly, and let my body kind of relax a little bit? Or when I speak, it comes very naturally to me to speak quickly and loudly. And so I will have to intentionally then notice, how can I lower my voice just a little bit? How can I slow down so that as I'm speaking, it's more relaxing and I'm sending signals to my body that we don't need to be activated. We can be relaxed. Breathing is one of the most important elements of this. And I'm going to talk about breath and the importance of breath when I go into my connections between various anatomical processes and how they correlate with different spheres. So I'm going to go into it in a lot more depth there, but the breath is our connection to etheric forces. This is how we pull them into our body. And it's not the only way. I mean, etherization is really that's the best way that we can do it. But and so if we are breathing a certain way, but we're still locked in the lower centers, it's not really going to be very productive. However, the breath still plays an extremely important part. So if I'm shallow breathing and I'm breathing from my chest all day long, I am telling my body that I am out of breath because I have been running for my life from a mountain lion for like the past 3 months. If I'm constantly in the state of upper chest shallow breathing, the body goes back to these very primal understandings and thinks you are out of breath because you've been running. You are out of breath because you've been trying to escape something. You are out of breath because it's not safe to relax. So in these moments where we feel an emotional trigger coming on, or a food exposure that maybe it's something that we usually react to, like gluten or dairy or something like that, instantly, if you recognize that you have been exposed to something like that, instantly bring the breath from the upper chest, if it has been in the upper chest, down into the diaphragm. Fill the diaphragm. You want it to feel as though someone has tied a little string around your belly button and they are pulling your belly button. And if this is your belly and they're pulling it, then your belly is going out because you are filling it with air. And then as you exhale, someone is pushing against it and the belly is going flat because the air is exhaling. And so usually I will see that the string is being pulled out, pulling outward from my belly button. And then as I exhale, the string is being pulled backwards towards my spine. And the breath that we are in is going to set the tone for everything else that our body does. So if I'm diaphragmatically breathing, automatically my shoulders are going to relax a little bit more. I'm going to relax a little bit more. Because I am diaphragmatically breathing, I then have to speak softer and more slowly. And it pulls the body into this more restful state automatically. And that is why diaphragmatic breathing can really be helpful. But it's important to understand too, when you are in fight or flight all the time, if you haven't even gotten down to basic grounding yet, and you are still very dissociative or having panic attacks all the time, I personally do not recommend focusing on your breathing, because the act of focusing on your breathing can make you panic more. And that is my opinion on things. There are a lot of people that suggest breath work for panic attacks and things like that. As someone who is trauma informed, I would absolutely not suggest that. If you are in that state, I would not do any form of breath work or anything like that until you are grounded and resilient enough within the nervous system to not automatically leave the body, because otherwise we are taking massive amounts of etheric energy and introducing it into a system that is already extremely ungrounded, and that's just going to lead to being even more ungrounded. So that's why I don't recommend that. But I am going to go over a daily practice of what something like this could look like. So you start your session by finding a quiet, comfortable space where you won't be disturbed. This is a controlled session because it really only works with intentional triggers at the start. If you separate your triggers from least to most triggering, beginning with something on the least triggering scale. So what I want to say about that is, when I say least to most triggering, what I mean is when it comes to things that would make me anaphylactic, dairy, for example, would make me anaphylactic, and dried mango, which is what I started out with, would give me a lot of different symptoms, often symptoms that would require me to take a mast cell stabilizer or something like that, but it did not make me anaphylactic. So when I was starting with food, I was starting with something that was the least dangerous to my system, introducing something that I could kind of begin to have it a small amount of and say to my body, see, I am sending all the safety cues to you. There's nothing around us. There's nothing behind us. This is just mango. That's it. It's a dried fruit. It's never made me anaphylactic, so we can calm down. We don't need to freak out. Everything's okay. I'm resilient. I'm strong. And my body recovers easily. So even if I would begin to feel a symptom, I would say, it's okay. I hear you. I feel the symptom, but again, it's just dried mango. It's completely okay. And I would also send the message to my body and say, if we do this and you tell me that this is not something that is good for me, then I won't have it. But we don't need to react so intensely to something like this. I will listen to you with just the smallest cue. I don't need all of these cues, because I'm here, I'm paying attention to you, I'm in this space with you, I'm listening to you. So I'll listen to you the first time. You don't have to give me all of these different things. Let's just go through a few sessions with this food, and we'll feel how safe it is and how it's not this huge danger, and then you can let me know how you feel about it. So I hope that makes sense. Sit down, take a few deep diaphragmatic, this is key because upper chest breathing signals lack of safety to the body, breaths, and gently close your eyes. Begin with visualizing a moment in your life when you felt truly happy and safe. Maybe it's a memory of being at the beach, laughing with a loved one, or even just sitting peacefully in the sun. As you recall that memory, pay attention to how your body feels. Notice the warmth of the sun on your skin, the sound of the waves, or the feeling of laughter bubbling up. Let yourself fully immerse in that sensation of safety and joy. Then you move on to the affirmations. This is where vocal cues come in. You say out loud things like, I am resilient. I am strong. My body is resilient. I am safe. I am not vulnerable. That's one of my favorite ones to say. I am not vulnerable. So I'm taking that consent back. I've been vulnerable in the past. I'm not vulnerable now. I do not have to react. Even if I reacted yesterday, I do not have to react today. The tone of your voice is key here. It should be calm, steady, positive, and encouraging. like you're speaking to a scared child who needs comfort. So you want to sound firm, but you want to sound safe and calm. You want to sound competent, but you want to sound relaxed. You may need to play around with this a little bit to feel what feels the best in your body. At first, this might feel awkward, but over time it starts to feel more natural, and those words begin to sink deep into your subconscious. Next, incorporate movement. This could be as simple as swaying gently or moving your arms in an expansive way, like opening them wide to mimic a welcoming gesture. I welcome this experience. Again, it sounds corny. I probably look kooky, but the facts don't lie. It does not lie. This is how, got another kitty. Kitty number 2. Take a sip of water every time a kitty passes on the screen. The facts don't lie. And these are the gestures and the signals that we do that bring so much change to the body, because whether we realize it or not, we are always signaling to the body. We are always signaling to ourselves, and we are always signaling to other people. This also reminds me of what Dion Fortune says that I love. She says, we're always building egregores 24/7. Every thought that we have is feeding an egregore. It's only a matter of, is it a positive egregore? So something that is of a higher nature, that is inspiring higher thoughts? Or is it of a lower nature? And is it keeping us stuck in the lower centers and in rumination and fear? It's the same thing, but manifested in the body. And wouldn't you know that our gestures, they impact what egregores we are connecting to, because they impact our thoughts. They really, truly do. So when we begin to stand up more straight and we're walking into a room and making eye contact and having welcoming gestures to other people, we begin to actually feel better about that person. There was another study that they did where they would ask someone, when you're in a conversation with someone, count how many times they blink. And the people who counted how many times the person that they were with blinked, they were obviously making eye contact the entire time because they're having to count the blinks. And they reported having more loving and affectionate feelings towards that person because of the eye contact that they were making. Our physical cues make us feel safer, safe enough to be open, safe enough to open ourselves up to another person, and safe enough to feel safe and grounded within our own bodies. If you are feeling particularly tense, you might also add some light stretches or even gentle tapping on your chest or arms. I love how that feels. I always love how that feels. Chest or arms to soothe the nervous system. I like to do happy signals or excited signals with my hands, as hand movements are one of our most potent cues to ourselves and others. Open palms that are held above the chest and facing away from the body, such as when you wave to a friend, are one such positive signal. So I had not had a taco in years because of all the spices and everything. So when I was going through all of this, my wife decided to make tacos, and I was really nervous, but I wanted to send signals to my body like, man, this is just a taco. That's it. It's just a taco. It's food. It's safe. It's never made me anaphylactic before. Sure, I've had all these other symptoms that would come up. I used to call them reactions, and you can also call them that, but now I'm calling them symptoms because they were just a symptom of something that needed to be reprogrammed, as opposed to necessarily a reaction to an actual threat, if that makes sense. But anyway, my wife brings over the taco, and I'm trying to trick my body. So I'm, looking like a total weirdo goofball. And I'm like, look, this is a taco. This is completely safe. We are excited about this taco and everything's going to be great. So I'm flashing my hands everywhere, showing happy, excited gestures, looking like a crazy person. But it actually works when we consistently put ourselves in these controlled environments where we're doing we got the eye movements down, we've got the vocal cues down, we've got the physical cues down. And again, I do not suggest, if something makes you anaphylactic, please, for the love of God, do not just go put yourself in a situation with that and test that. I do not recommend that at all. I'm talking about things that have a lesser you have a lesser response to them, and you are practicing building up resilience within the body. If the resilience is not built with the smaller things, then something larger, we won't have the resilience that is needed to actually face that thing. So please do not do that. And actually, do not mess with anything that is going to be a serious allergy, or I'm saying that very firmly. Unless you are working with a doctor or an allergist or a DNRS specialist or something like that, do not expose yourself to something that is actually going to be very dangerous to your system. Okay. Please do not do that. I am not suggesting that anybody do that. However, we do have so many things that we overreact to that are not life-threatening, but we can respond sometimes as if they are because of our fear programming. Throughout all of this practice, you remain focused on sending signals of safety to your body. If intrusive thoughts come up, like worries about a potential reaction to a smell or something triggering, you don't push them away forcefully. Instead, you acknowledge them, remind yourself that they're just your limbic system trying to protect you, and gently redirect your focus back to the sensations of safety and joy. I also don't call them reactions or exposures anymore in the moment. I call them sensations or experiences. It is just a scent I am experiencing in that moment. Soon it will pass by and my body does not need to react. So when I wrote all of this down, I was actually writing it for a group of people who are intentionally moving through this with scent and fragrance and things like that. Who are trying to overcome that, because that was huge for me. But this is also something I do in my life with emotional triggers. I had something come up even last night, and it was my body. It was one of those things where something happened. I didn't have all of the information. My body instantly said, "This means this," and made up this scenario that I didn't have any information on, and didn't know if it was true or not. And I did all of these things, and I sent all of these safety cues to my body, and I said, I do not have to react. I do not have to react. I don't know what happened here. I'm safe. I'm resilient. Even if this happened, I do not have to react. Even if this thing happened, I don't have to have this response, because I am safe. And I put my hand over my heart. I apologize if you guys can hear my tummy grumbling. It is well past dinner time here for me right now, but I've just been yapping. I'm safe. I'm not vulnerable. I'm okay. Even if this thing happened, I'm here with myself right now. There's no mountain lion behind me. There's no puma behind me. There's no serial killer outside my window. Everything's okay. My cat is asleep on the chair, and my house is silent, and I have Christ within me. I'm okay. I'm okay. And bringing myself back into that state of higher perspective and higher connection. And that's what this is. When we build a higher perspective, which, by the way, we can't have clairvoyance without clarity. That's what it is. We cannot have clairvoyance without clarity. So we need to have a higher perspective in order to be able to see things clearly. But in order to do that, we have to consistently work to undo past programming. And this is not something where you just do this and then reach a destination and that's it. You're in a higher perspective for the rest of your life and you never have to worry about this stuff again. No, this is something that takes effort consistently. And by that, what I mean is that we're always going to have triggers come up. We are always going to have times where the body feels afraid, it feels uncertain, it doesn't know what's going on, it doesn't know how to react to different things. We have to tell it how to react. And the more that we intentionally move into states of safety within the body and move into the higher nervous system, the more, again, I reiterate, we have this connection with higher forces that nourish us, that give us strength, that give us fortitude. They give us grace. They give us grace. And that grace holds us, it secures us, and it carries us through these different experiences so that we know that we can recover and we know that we can heal and we know and truly understand how resilient we are as human beings. We can't heal if we believe that we are terminally broken, if we believe that there is no going back. In order to heal, we have to understand that we are not alone, that our bodies are not alone. Everything within our bodies is responding. Every organ is responding to its etheric counterpart. And whether or not that is nourishing us or siphoning nourishment from us, depends completely on the forces that we are interacting with, the thoughts that we are thinking, the way that we're carrying ourselves. How are we treating ourselves in our day-to-day life? Are we meditating, or are we constantly going through life in this way that is just absolutely frantic or dissociated? It all comes back to these things. So this is kind of just me barely touching the surface with these topics. And as I get more into the specific systems and break those down into different organs or different, we're going to get into anatomy, and it's going to be really fun. But as we do that, we can get into some more specifics with different physical processes and how they correlate with etheric processes and how things impact us astrally. And with that, I would also like to say, I mentioned in a previous video about how I have been doing readings now. This is not the first time that I have done readings. I actually used to do readings years ago, and then I didn't for a long time for a few different reasons. And one of those reasons was because I was kind of just doing blanket readings, and people would ask me about their relationships or, things like that. And I decided that if I was going to do any kind of reading, I needed to have very strict boundaries around that. And I also wanted to have specific templates so that people can only get so many readings with me. I have 3 reading templates, and that's it. If you go through all 3 reading templates, then you will never have a reading with me again. And the reason why I do it that way is because I don't want anyone dependent on me. I am not the source of this information. God is the source of this information. Before I do a single reading, I pray to be a mediator of this information. It doesn't come from me. It just manifests through me. And you can access this exact same information as you move from the lower nervous system into the higher nervous system and build resilience within the body and build up your clairvoyance. And then you won't need to rely on anyone for readings because this information will be so freely available to you. And that's what I want. I really have an issue with practitioners who have lifelong psychic clients. It's like, what are you doing? Why do you want this person reliant on you forever? It just seems like some sort of siphoning gimmick or something. And I don't like that. So that being said, I have a life path and life purpose reading template. I have a shadow analysis template, and then I have a medical intuition template. I love the medical intuition reading. It's actually my favorite one to do. I have so much fun with it. I love delving into your esoteric anatomy and having those conversations. And I feel like I have learned a tremendous amount from doing that. It is really so amazing to be able to do that. And I feel so thankful every time I get to do that work with someone. And we get to discover so many things together and really build that relationship together. It's absolutely amazing. So if you would like to receive one of those readings, you can go on my website, and on my services page, I have an application that needs to be filled out. Just a few quick disclaimers around that. If you just donate money to me and expect a reading, you will not get a reading. That is not how things work. If you apply for a reading and for whatever reason don't hear back from me and attempt to threaten me or bribe me for a reading, that is not how that works, and you will not receive a response for me if that is the case. I have a specific system set up with this because I want to protect myself and I want to protect you. I only want to do readings that I feel like I am intended to do, meaning that if someone applies for a reading and maybe for whatever reason, I get the feeling that they are supposed to work this out with another practitioner, not me, or maybe this is something that they're supposed to work out on their own, then I'm not going to take that on. No matter how much money I'm offered, it doesn't work that way, because it's very important to me to have integrity and to do things a specific way. That being said, when you apply for the reading, it's on a sliding scale and it's by donation. When you apply, I don't know how much money I am going to receive from this. So some people give me $20, some people give me a few $100s, and that just is what it is. Whatever reflects your financial ability, that is what I want you to give. And don't worry about anything else. Just only focus on that. So when you apply, I accept the application before I know how much money I'm receiving from it. And I also do that so that we have a trust and you understand my integrity in this situation, because that's very important to me. So that is why I feel uncomfortable, and I'm not comfortable with someone messaging me. If you apply and say, please accept my application, I'll give you this much money, I'm not going to accept your application, and please don't do that, because that completely defeats the purpose, and it does honestly make me feel uncomfortable, because that is not how I plan to operate. Maybe some people operate that way. I am not going to operate that way. And so I just wanted to kind of lay down the law there for a second. And that aside, I have had the opportunity to work with so many amazing, amazing people. Again, if you do not have a lot of financial income, please don't let that keep you from applying. Often, if I'm being completely honest, it is often the people that have the least amount of money that need these things the most. And that is why I have a sliding scale program, because I've been in that position before, and I've been in the position where I didn't have financial ability. I didn't have access to certain things, and I felt very lost. And then you go online and you are reaching out, trying to find help in some area, and everything is so expensive. And that's not always a bad thing. People, they deserve to be compensated for their work. However, if I'm ever in a position where I can make it a little bit easier for other people, then that is what I am going to do. So thank you so much for listening to this and hanging out with me. I had such a great time with you. If you apply for a reading based on watching this video, feel free to throw that into your reasoning of why you are applying for a medical intuition reading, because It may aid me in us being able to work together on retraining your limbic system as well, and giving recommendations with that. So thank you so much, and please feel free to let me know your thoughts. Keep an eye out for the other videos that I have coming out soon. Make sure that you turn on notifications, because a lot of people will tell me that they just don't see my videos at all. They don't see anything. So make sure you turn on notifications. Like this video, I would really appreciate it. It really helps so much when you guys like and comment. I cannot even tell you. It really helps tremendously, especially because I have a very small channel. So thank you so much to the people who consistently do that. It really honestly means a lot to me. And I will catch you on the flip side.